Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez, please let's give her a warm Santa Ana welcome. Loretta and President Bill Donnan.
I want to tell you how important it is for you to go out and vote and to get those votes to come on in so we can win. I want to tell you about that, but you know what? I have this incredibly special friend who is so good about telling you why this election is so important to all of us. I want you all to put your hands together and say hello to our president, Bill Clinton.
Ladies and gentlemen, first, I have a hard time believing it's been 14 years since I was standing in this spot. But I'm glad that Loretta gave me a reason to come back. Here's what I want to say. I realize that except for a few dissident signs, and I welcome the people that aren't with us, that's another thing that makes America special. Nobody tells us what to say or what we can say. I'm largely talking to people today who are supporting Loretta Sanchez. So what I want to say to you is, I want you to let me give a little bit of a non-conventional speech here and tell you what I think you ought to be saying to everybody who is not here between now and Election Day. Because, frankly, most of this election, it's been highly entertaining. I mean, the Tea Party's made it interesting. We've got people interested in wrestling and witchcraft. And they got a candidate for governor who used to be a Republican congressman in Colorado who keeps saying President Obama is a Muslim who abolished Christmas in the White House, and when they showed him the Christmas tree, he said, "That's what I mean. See, it's full of hidden Muslim symbols." I couldn't make this up. So the Republican nominee was afraid he was going to be flanked. So he was asked what he thought about Denver's bike sharing program. Denver's regularly voted the healthiest city in America. The mayor is a Democrat nominee for governor, so they said to the Republican nominee, "What do you think about that bike sharing program?" He said, "It's a UN conspiracy to take sovereignty of Denver away from the United States." So all this is very entertaining. And some of the things they said about us, you know, there are these dueling stories. Their story is, okay, we left them in a big hole. We took 8 years to dig that hole. It was $3 trillion deep. But we gave them 21 months to dig out. We're not all the way out. Throw them out and put us back in. And the subtext of that is, while failing to get us out of the hole, they spent too much money, gave us too much government, and some of them say the president and his cabinet are closet socialists. And that's what they're saying. Okay, and then we have a story. Our story is, yeah, we were in a deep hole and we're not all the way out of it, but at least we stopped digging. And then we are building out of it, and all we're asking for is 2 more years. We're just asking for half as much time as you gave them to dig the hole to get us out of it and go on to the future. First of all, how are you going to decide? We're going to pretend this is something important like sports. We're going to look at the game film. We're going to actually look at the evidence. Here's what I think matters. Where are we now? What do we need to do? Who's more likely to do it? The rest of this is all smoke and mirrors. It may be entertaining. It may be enraging. But it doesn't have anything to do with how you're going to live and what kind of future your children are going to have. So where are we now? Well, before the financial collapse, which occurred on September the 15th, 2008, just 4 months before President Obama took office. Happy birthday. Before then, we had had 6 years of 100% control of both the Congress and the White House by the members of the other party. Now, when I was president, you heard what Loretta said. We had 22.7 million new jobs. The last 4 budgets I gave you were surplus budgets. We paid $600 billion down on the debt, and America would have been debt-free by 2015 if they hadn't changed my budget. And that's true. And with all respect to Loretta's MBA, people ask me all the time, how did you do that? What new great idea did you bring to Washington? And I always give them a one-word answer: arithmetic. I had this really dumb idea that if 2 and 2 was 4 in Orange County, it'd probably still be 4 when I got all the way to Washington. And we followed for 8 years in a disciplined rigor a rule called pay-go, pay as you go, which meant that if I wanted to increase funding for education, I either had to raise taxes or cut something else. Just like you have to do in California, and if you don't, you get in trouble, or the way this city runs, or the way you run your budget. And the more we got interest rates down, the more we got economic activity up. We did a lot of things with that money that we did have, cultivating high-tech jobs, trying to get information technology jobs, but we started with arithmetic. And you got 22.7 million new jobs, 600 billion down on the national debt, a path to being debt-free, and we moved 100 times as many people from poverty to the middle class as had moved in the previous 12 years, where they increased the debt from $1 to $4 trillion. Okay, so then I left. And the Supreme Court decided the presidential election. And what's the first thing they did? These people who were telling you that the Democrats are a threat to the stability of the future, that the Democrats are a threat to the budget. What's the very first thing they did? They repealed the pay-as-you-go rule over her strong opposition. They abolished arithmetic again. And they fought 2 wars, trying to make the seniors happy with a drug benefit that had a donut hole bigger than the donut practically. And they borrowed the money to China to pay for it and stopped enforcing our trade laws. So after gaining manufacturing jobs for 6 of the 8 years I was president, we lost manufacturing jobs for 8 years. Now, that's the truth. And poverty exploded. Somebody shouted poverty back there. It was horrible. This was all before the meltdown. Then what happened in the meltdown? You had all these big Wall Street banks that were subject to no regulation, no rules, and there was no economic growth in the economy. All the growth had come from consumer spending and housing, and as we all know, we came to the end of both of them. When you get your credit cards maxed out, you can't get another second mortgage, there's no more consumer spending. When incomes were $2,000 after inflation lower before the meltdown, they were the day I left office. And we couldn't build any more houses. In fact, we built too many. So the only other source of growth was finance. And in the decade before the meltdown, 90% of the economic gains had gone to only the top 10% of us, 40% to the top 1%. So what happened? All these people had all this money, and they were all dressed up with no place to go. So Wall Street could keep making money as long as they put together deals, but it was all like casino gambling because there was nothing to invest the money in. Not new jobs, not new businesses, not taking companies public so they could hire more people and produce more goods and services. And Bear Stearns had $34 at risk for every dollar they had in cash. Community banks in California, $10 at risk for every dollar they have in cash. When Lehman Brothers failed at 29 to 1 and the government didn't help them, the crash started. 4 months later, President Obama takes office with the Democratic Congress. Now, if you listen to the narrative of the Republicans, they would have you to believe that everything that happened from the moment he took his hand off the Bible to this day was his fault. As if you could get behind a locomotive going straight downhill at 200 miles an hour and stop it in 10 seconds. Now, what happened is thing bottomed out about July the 1st of last year. So, where are we? The Congress did save the banks, but they strengthened the requirements for paying it back. You know you're going to get 92% of that bank bailout money back? Maybe all of it, but a minimum of that. And they passed a stimulus bill, and her opponent says he wouldn't have voted for it. Said it was a waste of money. We're not out of the woods. Well, look, there's a $3 trillion hole. The stimulus was $800 billion, and only 1/3, about $270 billion, was designed to create jobs. The other 2/3 was to save teachers' jobs, save healthcare workers' jobs, and give 100 million working families a tax cut so they could keep going to the grocery store and keep the local grocer open. Don't forget how bad it was. Okay? With that $270 billion, you cannot fill a $3 trillion hole. But every single independent analysis, that is people that don't have a dog in this election hunt, says that it created more jobs than the expert thought it would, and if it hadn't been for the stimulus, the unemployment rate in America would be 1.5% to 2% higher than it is today. It created jobs. Don't let anybody fool you. Now, did it temporarily increase the deficit? It did. But a lot of that money was one-time spending, and when the economy comes back, you'll get it all back. When the president took the oath of office, the annual deficit was $1.2 trillion. How can these people say we're the big spenders and don't care about the balanced budget? They quadrupled the debt before I was president, doubled it after I left, and left the incoming administration with a $1.2 trillion deficit. That's what the game film shows. Those are just facts. So, where are we? Suppose we look at the competition. From the bottom of this recession to today, the United States has recovered 70% of its lost annual income. Our competitor Germany, 60%. Japan, 50%. The United Kingdom, 30%. Now, I don't want you to be happy about that, because all the new jobs are in the last 30%, and when we get out of the hole and start going into the future. The point is, we're closer to getting out of this hole than most of our major competitors because of the decisions that were made. Don't let somebody fool you. Look at the facts here. The president and the Congress have done better than most people think because they're not better. I don't blame people for being mad, but in life, not just in politics either, when you make an important decision when you're mad, there's an 80% chance you'll make a mistake. And I'm old enough to admit mine. But I'm not the only person here that knows that's true. When you make an important decision, when you are mad, there is an 80% chance you'll make a mistake. I don't ask the American people to give up their anger. I just want you to use it to focus and clarify your judgment. So that's where we are. That's where we are. We're better off than our competitors, not where we want to be. Right? What do we need to do? We need 4 things. We need more jobs as quick as we can get them. So we got to figure out how to emphasize efforts where jobs will grow. We know where that is. Jobs will grow in small business, in manufacturing. We got a colossal opportunity to bring manufacturing back. In high technology, green energy, and infrastructure. Now, that's where they'll grow. We need to make sure we got them financed. We need to make sure people are educated and trained to do them. And we got to do something about the debt long term. So that's what we got to do. That's my opinion, and I still spend an hour a day studying this economy. I know this has not been a conventional political speech, but we have to turn this election from a referendum into a choice. We have to turn this election into thinking. We have to ask people, where are we now? What are we going to do? Who's more likely to do it? Every time you get to who's more likely to create jobs and finance them and educate people to do them and do something right about the debt long term, you come up with the same answer, Loretta Sanchez. Every single time. You go tell people that, and she'll have a great night election night. Thank you.